Thanos. He is the reason Deadpool cannot die, and the reason is jealousy. Thanos placed a curse of immortality on Deadpool not as a gift, but as a punishment, a cosmic restraining order whose purpose is to prevent Wade Wilson from entering the afterlife, because the afterlife contains the one entity that Thanos considers his exclusive romantic interest: death. The abstract entity, the cosmic embodiment of mortality itself, developed a fascination with Deadpool, whose nature the franchise has never fully defined, but whose effect on Thanos is unambiguous. Thanos is jealous. The mad titan, who erased half the universe as a love letter to death, cannot tolerate the idea that death might prefer the company of a disfigured mercenary whose conversational skills consist primarily of pop culture references and anatomically specific profanity. Thanos' solution is the curse. Deadpool cannot die because Thanos has forbidden death from collecting him, and death, despite being the most powerful abstract entity in the Marvel cosmology, apparently respects the restraining order because the cosmology's rules require that abstract entities honor the terms of cosmic-level interventions regardless of their personal preferences. Thanos is the first entry on this list because he is the only being who has both created and can remove the specific cosmic barrier that makes Deadpool's immortality absolute rather than biological. The healing factor keeps Deadpool alive through regeneration. The curse keeps Deadpool alive through prohibition. Remove the healing factor, and the cancer kills him unless the curse intervenes. Remove the curse, and the healing factor sustains him until someone destroys his body beyond the factor's capacity to regenerate. Remove both simultaneously, and Wade Wilson dies permanently and enters the afterlife where death is waiting with whatever expression an abstract embodiment of mortality wears when the entity it has been watching finally arrives. Death. She is the destination, and the destination has feelings about the passenger. Death in Marvel is not a process. She is a person, an abstract entity whose consciousness, personality, and preferences operate on a scale that encompasses every living thing in the universe, and whose relationship with Deadpool is the franchise's most unusual piece of cosmic romance, because the romance is asymmetric in a direction the audience does not expect. Death is interested in Deadpool, not in Thanos, the titan who murdered trillions in her name, not in Wolverine, the immortal warrior whose killing career spans centuries. In Deadpool, the scarred mercenary whose proximity to death through his constant cycle of injury and regeneration has given death more exposure to his consciousness than to any other mortals, each death and regeneration cycle a brief visit to the afterlife's threshold, whose frequency has produced a familiarity that the franchise frames as attraction. Death can claim Deadpool if Thanos' curse is lifted. She wants to claim him. And her wanting is the cosmic level confirmation that Deadpool's immortality is not a permanent condition of the universe. It is a specific intervention by a specific entity whose removal would allow the natural process, death's collection of a mortal soul, to resume. Death is not Deadpool's killer. She is his destination, the entity waiting at the end of the road that Thanos has blocked, and her willingness to receive him is the guarantee that the block is the only thing keeping Wade Wilson alive beyond his healing factor's capacity. If you are enjoying this so far, hit the subscribe button and leave a comment with the character you think could actually beat Deadpool. Let us get back into it. Sir Wolverine with the Muramasa Blade. The blade negates healing factors, and the man carrying it has 150 years of experience using sharp objects to kill things that do not want to die. The Muramasa Blade is a weapon forged by the swordsmith Muramasa using a portion of Wolverine's own soul, and its supernatural properties include the ability to inflict wounds that healing factors cannot repair. A cut from the Muramasa Blade stays cut. The cells at the wound site do not regenerate. The tissue does not knit. The bleeding does not stop. And a killing blow delivered by the Muramasa Blade produces a death that the healing factor cannot reverse, because the blade's supernatural properties override the biological mechanism that normally prevents death from being permanent. Wolverine carrying the Muramasa Blade is the most credible threat to Deadpool's survival on this list because Wolverine possesses both the weapon capable of killing a healing factor user and the combat skill required to deliver the killing blow against an opponent whose own combat skills are approximately equal to Wolverine's. The matchup is close enough that the weapon becomes the deciding factor, and the weapon favors the wielder because the blade was forged from his soul and responds to his intent with a precision that no other wielders can replicate. The Carbonadium synthesizer and its users. The metal suppresses healing factors, and the suppression turns immortality into a countdown. Carbonadium is a radioactive metallic alloy whose most significant property is its ability to slow or suppress the healing factor in any organism it contacts, and weapons forged from Carbonadium transform encounters with healing factor users from wars of attrition into races against biological decay. Deadpool's own Carbonadium sword demonstrates his awareness of the metal's lethality, but the users who pose the greatest threat to Deadpool through Carbonadium are the ones who combine the metal's healing factor suppression with combat skills capable of delivering lethal wounds. Omega Red, a Soviet super soldier whose Carbonadium tentacles can drain life force and suppress regeneration simultaneously, is the most prominent Carbonadium threat because his entire power set is built around the metal's properties. A sustained Carbonadium exposure suppresses Deadpool's healing factor long enough for his cancer to advance, his organs to fail, or his wounds to accumulate past the threshold that unsuppressed regeneration could manage. Carbonadium does not kill Deadpool directly, it removes the one biological system that keeps him alive. And without that system, Deadpool is a cancer patient with open wounds whose life expectancy is measured in minutes. The Hulk. He has ripped Deadpool in half, and the ripping demonstrates a method of killing that the healing factor can theoretically prevent, but that the Hulk's strength makes practically irresistible. The Hulk's strength has no defined upper limit. The angrier the Hulk becomes, the stronger the Hulk gets, and the getting has no ceiling, which means a sufficiently enraged Hulk can generate enough force to destroy Deadpool's body faster than the healing factor can rebuild it. The scenario is molecular. If the Hulk strikes Deadpool with enough force to atomize his body, to scatter his cells across an area so vast that the individual cells cannot locate each other and reassemble, the healing factor faces a logistical problem rather than a biological one. Each cell can regenerate. But regeneration requires proximity. Cells that are scattered across a continent cannot form a body because the cells have no mechanism for long-distance communication, no way to coordinate their individual regenerative processes into a unified reconstruction, and the result is not death in the conventional sense, but dissolution, a consciousness distributed across millions of separate cellular regeneration events whose combined output never produces a functional organism because the output is too dispersed to coalesce. The Hulk's Deadpool killing method is not a strike. It is a scatter, a force application so extreme that the pieces are never in the same place at the same time again. Thor. The god of thunder can destroy Deadpool through a method that bypasses the healing factor entirely because the method is divine rather than physical. Thor's lightning is not electricity. It is the Odin force channeled through Mjolnir, a cosmic energy whose properties include the ability to affect beings at the metaphysical level rather than merely the biological one. A lightning bolt from Mjolnir does not simply burn tissue, it applies a force whose cosmic properties can theoretically destroy the spiritual component of a living being as well as the physical component, which means Thor's attack can potentially kill the soul rather than the body. And a body without a soul is meat rather than a person, regardless of how efficiently the healing factor repairs the physical damage. The distinction between killing the body and killing the soul is the distinction between a wound and an execution. And Thor's cosmic power set includes the capacity for execution at a level that the healing factor's biological domain does not address, because the healing factor heals cells, not souls. Cosmic Ghost Rider. Frank Castle with the power. Cosmic and the Spirit of Vengeance is one of the most overpowered characters Marvel has ever produced, and his power set includes multiple independent methods for killing beings that conventional weapons cannot destroy. Cosmic Ghost Rider is a variant of the Punisher who made a deal with Mephisto for the Ghost Rider's power, was subsequently imbued with the power cosmic by Galactus, and carries the Penance Stare, a supernatural weapon whose mechanism bypasses every physical defense because the stare attacks the soul rather than the body. The Penance Stare forces the target to experience every pain they have ever inflicted on another being simultaneously, and the psychic damage is lethal to beings whose history of violence is extensive enough that the accumulated suffering exceeds what the target's consciousness can survive. Deadpool's history of violence is enormous. The Penance Stare applied to Deadpool would force him to experience every death he has ever caused, every wound he has ever inflicted, every moment of suffering. His career as a mercenary has produced, compressed into a single instant of psychic agony whose intensity exceeds anything the healing factor can repair because the damage is spiritual rather than cellular. Scarlet Witch. Reality warping does not care about healing factors because reality warping does not operate within the biological framework that healing factors function in. Wanda Maximoff can alter the fabric of reality through chaos magic, and the alteration can include the removal of a target's existence from reality entirely, not killing them, but unmaking them, erasing the physical, biological, and metaphysical components of their being from the universe's structure so completely that the healing factor has nothing to heal because the cells the factor would regenerate no longer exist in any form. Scarlet Witch's most famous demonstration of this power is the House of M storyline's No More Mutants declaration, 3 words that rewrote the genetic structure of millions of mutants simultaneously, and the power that can rewrite millions of genomes with a sentence can certainly rewrite a single mercenary's existence with a thought. Wanda's reality warping is the most absolute threat on this list because it does not engage with Deadpool's defenses. It removes the framework within which those defenses operate. Molecule Man. He can disassemble Deadpool at the atomic level, and the disassembly is so fundamental that the healing factor has no mechanism to counter it because the healing factor operates at the cellular level, and Molecule Man operates at the subatomic level. Owen Reese can manipulate every molecule in his vicinity, which means he can reach inside Deadpool's body and separate every atom from every other atom simultaneously. The healing factor regenerates cells. Cells are made of molecules, molecules are made of atoms. If the atoms are separated, there are no molecules. If there are no molecules, there are no cells. If there are no cells, there is nothing for the healing factor to regenerate, because the biological substrate the factor acts upon has been disassembled below the level where biology exists. Molecule Man's Deadpool killing method is not destruction. It is deconstruction, a process that does not break the body but unbinds it, and the unbinding is permanent because the atoms, once separated, have no mechanism for spontaneous reassembly. The Phoenix Force. The cosmic firebird that represents life, death, and rebirth across the universe carries sufficient power to overwhelm any healing factor because the Phoenix Force is the source from which life and death derive their cosmic authority. A Phoenix Force wielder, whether Jean Grey, Hope Summers, Cyclops during Avengers vs. X-Men, or any other host, can direct the Force's energy at a target with an intensity that exceeds what cellular regeneration can process. The Phoenix does not burn tissue. It burns existence, the cosmic fire consuming the target at every level simultaneously, physical, spiritual, temporal, and the consumption is complete because the Phoenix nature encompasses the cycle of life and death itself. A healing factor is a biological process that reverses death at the cellular level. The Phoenix Force is the cosmic process that defines what death is, and a process that defines the rules cannot be overridden by a process that merely exploits them. The one above all. The Supreme Being of the Marvel Multiverse can kill anything because the Supreme Being of the Marvel Multiverse created everything. and the authority that creates is the authority that uncreates. The one above all is Marvel's God, the omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent entity whose existence is the foundation upon which every other entity, every cosmic force, every abstract concept, and every healing factor in the multiverse is built. The one above all does not need a method to kill Deadpool. The one above all needs only the intent, and the intent is sufficient because the entity's power is not a force applied to reality. It is reality, and a being who is reality can modify any component of reality without effort, without mechanism, and without the possibility of failure. The one above all is the final entry on this list because the entry is the endpoint of power scaling itself. There is nothing above. There is nothing beyond. And there is nothing in Deadpool's arsenal, his healing factor, his curse, his fourth wall awareness, his personality, nothing that can resist, counter, or survive the attention of a being whose power is the universe itself, deciding that one of its components should not exist anymore. Squirrel Girl. She has defeated every enemy she has faced, and the defeating includes entities whose power levels render the defeats logically impossible, which is the point because Squirrel Girl's power is not strength. It is narrative. Doreen Green has defeated Thanos, she has defeated Doctor Doom, she has defeated Galactus, she has defeated MODOK, Deadpool, Wolverine, and the entire roster of Marvel villains through a combination of squirrel-based abilities and an off-panel plot armor so absolute that the franchise has stopped trying to explain her victories and has instead embraced the inexplicability as the character's defining feature. Squirrel Girl's defeats of cosmically powerful enemies happen off-panel, the comic cutting away from the confrontation and returning to show Squirrel Girl victorious over a defeated opponent, whose power level makes the victory impossible, but whose defeated status is confirmed by the panel showing them on the ground. The off-panel mechanism is Squirrel Girl's weapon. She wins fights the audience cannot see, which means the audience cannot identify the flaw in the victory's logic, which means the victory stands, and the standing is permanent because a victory whose mechanism is invisible cannot be reverse engineered and therefore cannot be countered. Squirrel Girl can kill Deadpool because Squirrel Girl can kill anyone, and the mechanism by which she accomplishes the kill is the one mechanism no character in Marvel can defend against. It happens while you are not looking. Deadpool himself. He is the only person who has killed himself across multiple continuities, and the killing works because the killer shares every capability the victim uses to survive. Deadpool kills. The Marvel Universe establishes that a Deadpool whose fourth wall awareness has been weaponized into nihilistic purpose can kill any character in the franchise, including himself, through the exploitation of narrative knowledge that known universe defense can counter. A Deadpool who knows the story can identify the point in the story where the character is vulnerable, and the vulnerability exists not in the body, but in the narrative structure. The moments where the plot requires the character to be in a specific place, in a specific state, at a specific time, and the requirements create openings that a fourth wall-aware assassin can exploit. Deadpool can kill Deadpool because Deadpool knows where Deadpool will be, knows what Deadpool will do, knows every defensive capability Deadpool possesses, and knows the one thing that no other character on this list knows: how the story ends. A Deadpool who has read his own comic can position himself at the end of his own narrative and wait there with a Carbonadium blade and the knowledge that the healing factor, the curse, and the fourth wall are all constructs of the same fiction that he is about to destroy by walking off the last page. And that is everyone who can kill Deadpool, ranked from the cosmically jealous to the narratively impossible. The pattern, underneath all of them, is the same truth the franchise has been encoding in Deadpool's biology since the healing factor first activated in a Weapon X laboratory. Deadpool is not truly immortal. He is conditionally immortal, his survival dependent on a biological system that can be suppressed, a cosmic curse that can be lifted, and a narrative structure that can be broken. The conditions are extreme. The beings capable of altering them are few. And the franchise's insistence on maintaining the conditions rather than removing them is the strongest evidence that Deadpool's immortality is not a power. It is a story, and the story works because the audience believes the immortality is permanent, even though the list you just read proves it is not. 12 entities, 12 methods, 12 ways to kill a man who cannot die. And the man who cannot die has spent 34 years fighting, talking, joking, and regenerating without ever once acknowledging that the 12 exist, because acknowledging them would require acknowledging that the unkillable is killable, and the acknowledgement would ruin the joke. And the joke is the only thing Deadpool has ever valued more than his own survival.